Today I want to discuss the management of time. It's one of the basic skills that we all need in our lives in these busy times, with the complexity we've got to manage in our lives and our businesses, and with a rapidly changing world. And of course we all have the same amount of time, 24 hours every day, and yet some people seem to achieve more than others, often with a lot less stress. And of course farm families are not immune from time pressures. They've got the additional challenges that the family and the farm are interwoven, and that can lead to tensions as to where time might go at a particular point in time. So farm families really need to be good time managers, particularly with the way the world is going. So let's explore how we might improve our time management. The subtitle you can see there is Working Smarter, Not Harder. So from the outset, that's our goal. We're not about increasing pressure. We're really about the opposite. We're about working effectively and having time for leisure and our families. So let's go and see what we can learn about farm management, and I hope there's some ideas here that might be useful to you and your families. So we know family farms are under all sorts of pressure, and if we can improve our time management, we'll be much better able to handle those pressures. The performance of people in the farm business is critical, become even more critical because of the complexity, new skills required, the fact that we've always got to be timely in what we do, and now we need time as well to research new opportunities, and we've got to balance our time between being operators of the farm business and then all the management requirements which are increasing to effectively run a farm business. So we've got to learn to balance conflicting priorities there. So the performance of people in the farm business is critical. And then on top of that, if we employ labour, and in any case our family labour is very expensive, both the management side and the operational side. And in Western countries, if we're to be competitive with low-cost countries, we really, with high costs, we've got to try and use things like the high cost of labour very effectively in order to be competitive. And then there's an additional thing in our family farms. We're self-employed people. We don't go to an office where there's a routine and a boss, and there are various things in place that guide our day and mean that we really are controlled to a degree by other people. We're self-employed, and so we have to have practices that give us control over our time. And it requires, to do this, it requires planning, and it requires some discipline as well. So there's some challenges we have in being more effective time managers. Let's see how we might rise to tackle those challenges. But first of all, what's time management? What are the benefits of good time management? It's about achieving control over our time and our work routine. It's about implementing effective work plans. It's very much about making sure we allow time for our family and our relationships and for leisure. It's getting a mechanism that allows us to do things in priority order. So we do those important things at the right time, in the right way, and make sure they're not forgotten. And as we've said in the subtitle, it's about working smarter as well. Just a little quote here from Stephen Covey, one of the management gurus. It's a bit of a play on words. the key is not to prioritise what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So what he's saying there is, hey, when you're drawing up a plan, you need to do it in priority order. Make sure you're dealing with your priority first, not listing all the things that you've got to do and then going from there. So very much time planning is about getting things done in priority order. So let's see some of the things we might do. First of all, if we have a questioning attitude to time management, that can really help us understand whether we're doing the right thing at the right time. So the sort of questions we should be asking are, should I be doing this job? Why am I doing this job? Should someone else be doing it? When is the best time to do this job? Where's the best time to do this job? And even, need we do this job at all? And we need to ask, is there a better way? So it's a questioning all the time to see that we're doing things effectively. And we need to say, what's the best use of my time right now? So those sort of, if we get into the habit, and so much of time management is really about habit. If we get into the habit of asking these sort of questions, we'll be pushing ourselves towards a more effective time management situation. Now, this next thing, I know you'll probably think, gee, do I have to do this? What's the value of this? But if you take a little time out to do some recording of where your time goes on particular tasks, that can really help in seeing where you're wasting time, or where time's going on low priority jobs, or where jobs maybe needn't be done at all, or where someone else could do them rather than you. And you'd be aware of a thing called the Pareto Principle, and it applies to lots of things, but it does apply to time management, where if you could find the things that deliver most to achieving your goals, financial goals and otherwise, it's quite uncanny that quite often 20% of the effort can give you 80% of the value of the outcome if you really get targeted on that. So thinking about where the effort should go to maximise the outcome, and getting rid of things that really don't contribute much to your business or achieving your goals is pretty important. So if you can record where your time is spent before you sit down and do a time plan, that can really help guide what goes into the plan, in what order, and what's important. And there's lots and lots of research that tells us that when people sit down and estimate where their time goes on particular tasks and then record it, there is quite a big difference a lot of the time between their estimates and the actual. And so we need some actual of where your time goes to give a basis for your plan. And you don't have to do it every day because it takes time, of course. But if you take a week every now and then and record where your time goes, including unproductive time, that can give you a basis to improve your time management and to prepare some time management plans. So I've just got a very basic sheet there. You'd need some dates on it. Say this is a record for time spent during the week beginning Monday the such and such of February or March or whatever. And you put down everything you do, including unproductive time, and that gives you a detailed basis on which to start planning. So it's a little bit onerous, but if you do it every now and then as a sample of your time, you'll get that time back many-fold by really making sure that your estimate of time spent is the actual time spent, so that you're dealing with realities, not with a guess. Because as I've said, often there is a big difference between where people think their time goes and where it actually goes. So one method I've used and found useful with time planning, so we've done our recording, we're getting an idea of where our time actually goes now. One method that I've found useful is to divide jobs up into A, B, C and D. The A jobs are the ones that must be done in the planning period, whether it's today, this week or a month or whatever. The B jobs are jobs that should be done. The C jobs are jobs that can be put off to some later time. And very importantly, the D jobs can be delegated to someone else, because a lot of us have grown up in a situation where we were doing nearly all the operation or particular tasks on the farm, and then a son or a daughter comes home and we're just not used to delegating. And so we plough on, working harder, trying to do everything we've always done, when in fact if we could get those D jobs done by someone else and have some more time ourselves to do the real management and the research on new opportunities, that sort of thing, then we can really start moving forward with our time management. And on top of that, the people we delegate to, they're developing their skills, they're feeling useful and everything else, and so we're growing other people in our business as well. So have a think about how you might, for a particular day, week, month or even year, divide the jobs into A, B's, C's and D's. And once you start doing that, you can prepare your annual, monthly, weekly and your daily work plans and start to get the priorities, which is really where we get the biggest bang for our time. If we can get the top jobs done at the right time, when we've got the energy and in really good order, that's what's going to deliver outcomes for our families and for our business. But it's pretty important when you do this time planning that you don't plan 100% of your time, because as we well know, unexpected events occur. We can have bad weather, we might have a family health problem that requires time that comes up unexpectedly. We might have a new opportunity that needs time for research. So we leave a little bit of slack, something like 30 or 40% for unexpected events. But if we really on that plan part, that 60 or 70% that we plan, if we nail into that in a priority fashion, it can be quite amazing how much more we can achieve and still have time to cover those unexpected events without too much stress, and cover those in a decent sort of way. Just moving along with other things to help us with our time planning. Of course, planning always takes time, and I guess you're saying, gee, we're adding another job here, but this is a job that can save a lot of time if we do it well. And so just as a guide, perhaps 10 minutes to plan every day. You might plan it the night before or the afternoon before. And preferably do that, because then you can talk to people overnight about what's happening the next day. Half an hour to plan each week, and the same. You've got the ability, if you do it ahead of time, to communicate with others. And it's amazing how the subconscious works. That when you have done planning, it's in your head and your mind is working away as to how you might most effectively implement that plan. Whereas there's nothing there. If the plan hasn't been done, it's a jump from job to job, or firefighting, or not doing things in a logical way. So if you do this planning and allow just that bit of time, 10 minutes for a day, 30 minutes for a week, and an hour to review the past month and plan the next, that's not a big chunk of your time, and can deliver a lot more effectiveness, and you'll get that time back manyfold. One thing you need to do when you're planning those jobs and allocating time to those jobs is not just focus on doing the job. I put a tractor with a spray rig there just because I think that's a classic job where it often takes as much time to get ready and to pack up afterwards is to do the job. So they're getting ready for the spraying, it's getting the chemical, it's calibrating the sprayer, it's making sure everything is working well. The doing the job mightn't take all that long, and then the cleaning up afterwards, washing out the spray rig and putting it away and so on, can take a bit of time. So make sure when you're looking at a particular job, you don't just think of the doing it. You think of how can I be more effective in getting ready for that job, setting up for the job, and how can I be more effective in packing up so everything's ready for when I need to do that job again. So consider all the components of a particular job. And of course, try to coordinate, and this is a benefit of planning too, that you know a number of jobs you've got to do. Try to coordinate jobs. So if you are going out to the back part of the farm, and you know there's a hole in a fence on the way, and maybe another couple of jobs that could be done, you do them as you're going out. You make things happen together. And certainly when you go to town shopping, that you're gradually developing your list over time, and when you go to town, you do as many jobs to spread that travelling time as you possibly can. So planning really helps with that coordination, and that alone can save quite a bit of time. Using unproductive time. We all have unproductive time. While we're waiting for visitors to come, waiting for phone calls, and maybe meals aren't quite ready, whether we're doing them ourselves or someone else is doing them, we get little bits of time which are often quite unproductive. And so if you get into the habit of setting up jobs requiring small amounts of time, it's amazing how, and it stops those jobs becoming annoying or done under pressure or done at a time when you should be doing something else. Amazing how much you can do. And I remember as an aside that when we had a particular Governor-General appointed in Australia, his wife was interviewed and was asked, hey, what are the particular characteristics that have enabled your husband to do so much in his life? And she actually came back and said his ability to use small amounts of time. And I think if we can get into that habit of just using small amounts of time when we're waiting or whatever to set up the next job, get the workshop manual out and maybe the spare part on the workshop bench, maybe do that, send that email, make that quick phone call, pay that bill, that sort of thing. It's amazing how much we can do, and then it frees up a time for other big jobs that can be done in proper priority order. And one of the real challenges we've got is to use travelling time. I once worked out way back that by the time I was 50 years of age, I would have driven 1 million miles. We were talking miles in those days, and I'd have spent a year in 8-hour days behind the wheel of a car. And I resolved at that point in time that I would use all sorts of techniques to use that time effectively. It might be having a committee meeting by taking someone in one of my important staff with me so that we could really, without distractions, talk about important things. We started to use mobile phones, of course, widely used now. I used educational tapes, all that sort of thing, to use travelling time. And also these days in our tractors with auto steer and the like, we've got some time there where we can be listening to audio tapes about all sorts of things and doing learning and making maximum use of our travelling time. So you might like to think about that, all the ways in which unproductive time can be used, and again, time planning allows us to think a little bit more about that. The next thing is interruptions. We do in our lives often waste a lot of time, or we're ineffective because we're interrupted, or we interrupt ourselves and go and do something else because we aren't properly planned. It's one of the major ways in which we can be more effective time managers is to consolidate time for those big jobs, the ones that take a good chunk of time, consolidate it, make sure we're not interrupted, so that we're not getting out from under that repair job, under a vehicle or a tractor or whatever, out half a dozen times when we should be allocating our full attention to getting that job done in one hit. But we have to fight to do that, because people will interrupt us, and if we're not planned, we'll interrupt ourselves and think of other things that we need to go and do. And often a job that might have been done in half a day ends up being done in little bits over a week and taking a lot longer. Now, some of this is pretty tough, but we need to keep control over our time. As managers, that's our responsibility. We don't want to be rude. We want to allow other people to have time with us and communicate, and family and so on. But we as managers do need to keep a reasonable amount of control. And so it's not all that hard for people to understand that there are times when they will get your full attention, be it with phone calls or visitors or whatever, but they will get your full attention if they allow you to have time to do your major tasks and get those done, and then then there is time available for other things. It's not that the visitors aren't important or the phone calls aren't important. They need to happen at the right time of day or the right time of the week. And I've seen plenty of people that really it isn't too hard. They have an understanding with their family members and with representatives who are selling fertiliser, chemicals or whatever, as to when they'll be available, when they can have full attention. And again, I wouldn't want to appear hard, but sometimes if someone arrives unexpectedly, it is better not to go inside and sit down and have a cup of coffee. It's better to stay standing up and deal with the unexpected visitor quickly, and maybe say, hey, would you mind coming back at a later time? I'll have time for you at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Once you sit down and invite people in, you're giving a signal to that visitor that they can control your time. But also it's amazing how the time goes and the day goes, and the thing you wanted to do doesn't get done, or gets done in haste and not done properly, or done under stress. So there are all sorts of little techniques to try and prevent interruptions and keep control over your time. And another thing is, as human beings, we often have a big job to do and we just can't get started. We think, gee, we avoid it. We do lots of other things. Now, if you've got an elephant of a job, often if you can break it into bits and say, right, today I'm going to do part A of this job. It's amazing once you get started how you can move on and do the other bits, because often it's getting started that's the hardest thing. But B, by breaking into achievable components, you can achieve big things without the stress, doing it at an appropriate time when you're fresh and so on, and you can get the real satisfaction out of having achieved something big. Whereas if you avoid, then often done under pressure, you don't enjoy it, you don't do it well, and therefore you don't get the outcomes that you're looking for. And this talk, because we're talking farm families, is as much about how we deal with this interwoven business and family situation, and make sure we don't damage relationships. So in our family, for sure, one of the first items we put in our plans when we're sitting down with our family meetings and planning the years ahead and the months ahead is to make sure we've allocated sufficient time for family and leisure, and that the different members of the family, we're covering the farm and covering the family while family members are away. So we've started to think about supporting one another to make sure we get adequate leisure, but to make sure that things go on while people are away, and we're fully supporting people to go away in the right sort of way. So when you're planning, allocate sufficient time for family and leisure. And I think we all know, but it's a trap on our family farms, often because we love what we do and we say, well, really our work is our hobby, which is a bad statement, really, but continuous work causes people to operate ineffectively with the batteries half flat. That's when accidents happen, and that's when work is really not carried out effectively at all. So we need to avoid the continuous work, and good time planning can help us do that. And on top of that, workaholics, and there are plenty of them about, if they don't have time for friends and family, relationships can be damaged and some very important things can be lost. So there's not much joy in being a workaholic, either from a personal health and productivity point of view or from a relationship point of view. And I've worked with young people a lot, and we need to understand the needs of young people when sons or daughters are coming back to the farm. They may have a different work pattern, they have a different need to be with their friends and to have leisure at different times. And so they need a guilt-free, properly planned time off when the work commitments are done. But they need, planning can really help us deal with our young people, give them a lot more work satisfaction, but also satisfy their needs for leisure and for their friends and so on. We mentioned that we only want to plan 60 or 70% of our time, and a lot of people say, why plan? There's too much uncertainty. But the reverse really is the case. A plan can help us deal with uncertainty. It's like a rudder. It allows control, flexibility, and it can include alternatives for wet weather or other events that might happen. So it really allows us, when an unexpected thing happens, to have a base and control on which to change. Whereas if we don't have a plan, we're flat-footed, we're starting from scratch, and we can easily jump on the unexpected thing but miss out on something important that we should be doing. We haven't thought about the alternatives, and therefore we mightn't work in an effective sort of way. So all sorts of tricks to time management, but really, I guess as we're going through, you're saying, gee, that's just logic, isn't it? But as human beings, we get into bad habits, and the fact if we can plan and get ourselves with a roadmap for what we're trying to do and when, then we can crack open these bad habits and start to be quite a bit more effective. Implementation is always the tough bit. Planning's one thing, but making it happen is always the tough thing. So there are some things that might guide us with this. We want to hit the target. That's why we've got a dartboard over there on the side. And in the implementation of plans, here are a few guidelines that might be of help to you. The first one is do the most important things first. When you're fresh, when you're in the best position to do them, it's amazing. If you can do those important things, you feel good, the rest of the day just flows. Whereas if they're pushed off until late in the day, you're tired, you do them in haste, perhaps don't do them correctly, you know you have to do them, they're sitting in your mind all day. If you can do the important things first, it's amazing how things pan out in a much happier and easier and effective sort of way. Distinguish the important from the urgent. What do I mean here? There are jobs that may never become urgent, like tidying up your office and getting a decent filing system, like tidying up the workshop so that you can find your tools, you don't waste time looking for tools. And by the way, part of the planning and part of the guidelines for people you work with is that tools go back where they came from. We've got to have some habits there that save a lot of time by being organised with machinery, with tools, with our offices and so on. But there are a lot of things that may never become urgent but are important. Things like maintaining contact with an important buyer may never be urgent, but it might be important just to give that person a call every now and then and let them know what you're doing, how the season's going, and what business you might be able to do with them at a later stage. So distinguishing the important from the urgent is very important, and planning, of course, stops people from being firefighters where there are urgent things happening all the time and just pushing out the things that they ought to be doing anyway. Pretty important little guideline. The first, for most of us, some of us are owls, so we work better at night, and some of us are fowls, but most of us work most productively in the first half of each day. And so there's a little quote there that might help you think about this and your families. If you lose an hour in the morning, you'll spend all day looking for it. It's just amazing if you can just get in early in the morning and hit those important things and bowl over the most important business for the day. The day just flows. But if you do something of low priority or unproductive time for the first hour or two of the day, then the day becomes a bit of a nightmare trying to do what you'd set out to do. And another thing, particularly for self-employed people, but all of us really, we need to resist the temptation to do only what we enjoy. We need to do what we enjoy, but after we've done the good, the most important things for our families and for our business. And we need to distinguish work accomplished from the hours worked. The thing that matters is getting the job done, not how many hours it took. And that's again with planning and effective time management. We're trying to minimise the time it takes to do a good job. We're not looking at how many hours it takes. So we need to distinguish there between work accomplished and the hours that it takes to do it. It's not hours that deliver outcomes. It's properly organised work that delivers outcomes. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of us have trouble delegating, and often the reason we have trouble delegating is that we're not organised. We don't know what we're going to do tomorrow or even an hour from now, and therefore we're not able to delegate to others, to communicate to others who might be able to help us, and we help them too. So learning how to delegate is a tough task, particularly for mums and dads who've operated together and have learned how to work together, and then sons and daughters come home, or the business expands and there are employees and so on. Learning how to delegate is critical to good time management. And I guess one of the major benefits of good time planning is that you can communicate to others in advance what's planned. And we know that one of the management gurus, Peter Drucker, has said this, that 60% of management problems in a whole range of businesses are due to poor communication. And so if you've got a plan, you've got something to tell people about, and they can start to think how they can work in with that plan. If you haven't got a plan, everyone's flat-footed and waiting and not able to prioritise, not able to organise. A lot of time gets wasted, but equally importantly, relationships get damaged too, because someone be thinking, well, look, they didn't take the trouble to even tell me that they were going to do this, or they wanted me to help them with this, and therefore jobs get started under pressure, in haste, with bad relationships, a bit of anger and tension, and don't get done well, and it's destructive of family relationships and work team relationships. So a major benefit of having a time plan, taking that time to plan the day, the week, the month, the year, and having it in writing so that people can see it, and think about it and position themselves and do some thinking. Hey, I've got to do that next week. How can I get ready for that? Gee, I better read that manual. I better think about how I can do that most effectively, rather than having things land on your plate with 5 minutes notice and you're expected to perform well. So use the written word where possible. The garbled message as you're racing out the door to tell someone to do something is usually not very accurate, and again can lead to tension and bad relationships when things don't turn out the way you might have thought they would. But it's often just poor communication that's the problem. And I've got a little phrase called the faintest ink is better than the fondest memory. And so writing things down, much more accurate. People can carry them with them. They don't have to remember. They can refer back to it. Very important. And then part of this writing down is to use work charts, have the plan stuck up somewhere, use these days all sorts of electronic aids we can use to help people know exactly what is needed to be done, the number of cattle that are meant to be herded from a back paddock to another paddock, the things that are needed to be purchased from town, the chemicals, the fuel or whatever, notice boards where maintenance issues can be put up, safety issues can be put up, all things that are good management but also good time management. And periodically, when you're working up your work plans, so you get involvement and ownership in the plans, some roundtable discussions are important. And there's that quote I mentioned earlier that 60% of all management problems are the result of poor communication. So a major benefit of time planning is having something to communicate to others. I thought just to get it down to some nitty-gritty detail and to just help you to focus on something tangible and maybe share some things with members of your family and your work team and see what you can do about it, I'd list a few don'ts, a list of things that contrive to have us waste time. Let's see what you think about some of these. Now, I'll whiz through them pretty quickly, and a lot of them apply to any business, but certainly apply to farm businesses. So first of all, disorganised work areas. Well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? And this is important and urgent. If we get our work areas organised, it may never be urgent, but it's important to do that so that we know where things are and things work well. Poor use of the telephone and the internet these days and iPhones and all the rest of it. A lot of people having time taken on trivial matters, low priority matters, when they should be doing other things. So we've really got to watch that we use these aids for communication in the right sort of way, rather than that they become a time-wasting part of what we do. I've mentioned visitors who do not value your time or who are given appointments at the wrong time of day. People who don't keep appointments can waste just so much time. Now, here are the tough ones. We can get into the habit on the farm, because the work and the family and the home are all close together, of having long morning and afternoon teas and late breakfasts and long lunches. If those habits creep in, our day can disintegrate and we can have great difficulty getting those chunks of time that we need to do the big job. So a bit of discipline to work when we work, and then relax when we relax, but not mix the two in together too much. That can really cause us to have problems in achieving what we need to achieve. Poor job instruction is a standard. That the time taken to give good job instruction, particularly for new employees or young members coming back into the family, will save time again and again and again, and save money too. When accidents happen, machinery is broken, time is wasted, that sort of thing. So getting good at job instruction is part of good time management. Some of you may have heard of Parkinson's law. It's an old one. It says the work expands to fill the time. So we need discipline to say, well, this job should take this amount of time and we'll work effectively to achieve it in that time, rather than, oh, we've got the whole day. Let's just mosey along slowly at this job, and before we know where we go, where we know the day's gone. Yes, the job might have been done, but we could have done several other jobs as well. Shopping and sales, it's nice to go to town and have a nice drive and mosey around doing this and that, but if we don't coordinate things or we don't focus it as a job, again, distinguish between what's a real job and what's a leisure thing. Going to machinery sales or going to livestock sales, that sort of thing. Sometimes we've got to say, why are we here? What's the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? How can we do it in reasonably minimal time? Is this just a social thing? Well, if it's a social thing, let's regard it as that. Or is it a work thing? If it's a work thing, am I doing it in the most effective way? And of course, there's always procrastination, particularly when we're faced with those big jobs that we don't particularly look forward to. And that is very much a waste of time. Failure to listen or read instructions, haste where things get broken or people get hurt. We know that can waste a lot of time. Good time planning means we reduce the amount of haste in things that we're doing. Inability to say no. Sometimes we've got to say no to people who come and want to control our time or take our time when we've got other important things to do. Refusal to delegate, we've talked about that. Blaming others, a dead waste of time, and it damages relationships anyway. Need to focus on how you do it better the next time. Not doing jobs properly the first time is a time wasted. Do it once and do it well. Lack of coordination of jobs, as we've discussed. Firefighting, jumping from job to job is a big waste of time. Inadequate machinery maintenance or spare parts inventories, it can lead again to firefighting and lead to problems when you least want them, when important jobs are being done that earn income for the farm. So that's a planning thing as well. Lack of care with machinery and equipment can not only be a time waster but can cost a lot of money. Poor property layouts and access and fences and gates and so on. And gang sizes where someone's standing around doing nothing, or someone needs some help, hasn't got the help, and they're risking an accident, or it takes a lot longer because they're trying to do it on their own. So getting the gang size right, not too large and not too small, is an important thing. So I hope that little list of things might just help you to get focused on some nitty-gritty of habits we get into that do waste time, and you might like to share that list with some of your family and the work team. And so let's summarise. The guidelines for better time management are to plan and implement tasks in priority order, question what you do, allow sufficient time for planning. You'll get that time back many-fold if you do that well. Find ways to use unproductive time. Consolidate time into useful chunks for the bigger jobs. Break the big jobs into small components. It makes it a lot easier to get started, and you can be amazed how relatively easily you can do big jobs that otherwise can become a real problem, to cause a lot of tension and often done at the wrong time in the wrong sort of way. Delegate, but you can't delegate until you've got a plan, until you're organised. Distinguish the important from the urgent, so that those important jobs like tidying up office, workshop, contacting an important buyer or whatever, so they're done, and you're not just living every day on urgent jobs which may not be the jobs you should be doing at that particular time. Make sure you allocate time for family and leisure so relationships are built and strengthened and batteries are kept fully charged. Do the most important things first, and your days will run so much more effectively, so much more satisfying, happy, and time for other people as well. Resist the temptation to do only what you enjoy, because sooner or later you've got to do the important things. Why not do them first, and then you can enjoy some of the things that you enjoy. It's not about hours worked, it's about work accomplished, and you need to have that mindset. When you've got a plan, you can use it as a rudder and modify it as changes arise. And then an enormous payoff from good time planning is that you've got something to communicate with other members of your family who can support you, you can support them, they can be thinking about the best way to do things that are in the plan to do down the track, and you can get enormous benefit. But if the opposite occurs and you aren't planned and you therefore have nothing to communicate and you're forever landing things on people's plates with short notice, that damages relationships as well as leading to pretty poor time management. So I hope that brief look at some of the guidelines for better time management might be helpful to you. And remember, one of the things here is that this is one of the skills that doesn't perish over time. If you develop good time management habits, you've got them for life. Yes, you'll need to refresh every now and then to make sure you don't slip back into old habits, but some effort into good time management habits early is something that you can pay off. You'll get a payoff over a long time. Whereas, as we well know, there are other skills that you might have of particular varieties or technologies and so on that are perishable. They change over time. You have to keep learning. But one of the wonderful things about time management is that if you get good at time management, you have got it for good. It's a non-perishable skill. So I hope that is a bit of an incentive for you to really have a think about what we've been talking about and see with your work teams and your families that you can all become good time managers, and you'll have a lot of fun and you'll be very productive if you do that. So I hope this talk has helped you to work smarter, not harder. Thank you.